Jeff Pasquino from the footballguys.com. I believe lives in the Baltimore area, maybe outside of Baltimore there. I wonder if he's been to Isabella's for pizza, PT.
I don't know, but
Little Italy.
I know that he's been in the Inner Harbor. I know that.
Sports Bash 97.3. If you have a fantasy football question for Jeff Pasquino, send it in now. 609-403-0973. Jeff, welcome back, man. How are you?
Good to be back. And by the way, that's Utah and Pecos Street. That's right near Camden Yards.
Yep, that's exactly that's where Camden Yard was. The Camden Pub over there, a little place called the Camden Pub, I think. Is there
Pickles is the main Pickles is the main spot.
Pickles Pub right there across the street from Camden Yards. All right, Jeff, we're getting into playoff time now for our listeners out there for this week in fantasy football. If you have a question for Jeff, send us a text message 609-403-0973. And all right, let's jump into quarterback spot. Ben Roethlisberger taking on the Giants. Big Ben was a big performer early. Will he help you out in your playoff game?
I sort of like him, but I'm a little hesitant. And the reason is that the Giants have been really good on defense. They haven't given up more than 2 passing touchdowns since week 5. But Roethlisberger does really well at home. So I have him as a lukewarm. We have him in our top 10, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's a little bit towards the bottom of that top 10 list.
How about Colin Kaepernick against the Bears? I mean, ever since he's got this job, he's quietly gotten better and better every week.
He has, and he gets another good matchup against Chicago. I think the main thing that he's going to be fighting is the elements. There could be some rain, maybe some flurries, and that could be a sloppy track, but he's the main guy. He's the engine that runs that offense, and right now it's running pretty well.
Phillip Rivers taking on the Bucs. That should be an interesting game there, as the Bucs have played a lot better.
It is, and it really comes down to, are they going to throw the ball a lot, or are they going to let Melvin Gordon get the ball? He leads in touches inside the 10, so that's really the downside for Rivers. But I think that's going to be a high-scoring game.
Flip the script in that Steelers game. What about Eli Manning if you're going to use him against the Steelers?
I think that he's a good option. The Steelers overall are not a great passing defense, but it has been improving of late. We have him as a high-end quarterback, too, this week. It's mostly Odell Beckham and not much else.
Last week, you had, Tannehill, 285 and 3 touchdowns. He's got the Ravens. This week, you going with the hot hand?
For Miami, I don't know about that. I had to scroll down to find his name here. It's towards the bottom against Baltimore. Baltimore's one of our top 3 defenses, so that's really a tough one. But there's a sleeper wide receiver in that game.
Oh, he'll share that with us in just a bit. Jeff Pasquino, footballguys.com. If you have a fantasy football question, 609-403-0973. You can text in. Starting running backs look this week. How about a guy who might be off the radar a bit, taking on the 49ers, Jordan Howard?
Yeah, we like him a lot this week. I think that's probably going to be their main engine for moving the ball for the Bears. Matt Barkley had a respectable game. His receivers still have the dropsies. There are still a bunch of no-name guys, but Howard should be running against the number 1 running back defense to target in the 49ers.
How about LeGarrette Blount? This time of the year, no Gronk. We'll get into that a little bit later. You're leaning on Blount as the playoffs come around?
I think you have to. As the weather turns colder, he's definitely the guy, especially down in the end zone. You still have Brady throwing the ball around, but without his number 1 target in Gronkowski, Blount gets the bulk of the work.
How about Rob Kelly? A lot of people went out and got him big time at Week 11. They got the Cardinals.
Yeah, the problem is that matchup with the Cardinals. I think he's still a top 25 guy, but he's barely at that line because Arizona's a pretty solid defense. I like Kirk Cousins to be throwing a little bit more than handing off that game.
All right, Jay Ajayi had a couple of big weeks. He's got the Ravens this week. Do you like him to regain that, maybe not 200-yard form, but to get triple digits?
No, I think he's a borderline running back 1, but I downgrade him for 2 reasons. 1, Baltimore's very good against the run, and number 2, the offensive line is really banged up for Miami, and he struggled last week because of it. So Ajayi's still in play. He's still startable, but expectations have to be more towards the running back 12 to 15 range this week.
All right, how about Spencer Ware? He had some big weeks. Now we're in the playoffs. He struggled the last couple of weeks. How about Spencer Ware with the Chiefs taking on the Falcons?
I like them this week, and we have them ranked in the top 10. Atlanta is not a good defense. They give up a lot, and when Kansas City runs up against a team that's a high-powered offense, they try to play a little bit more ball control. So that plays right into the hands of Spencer Ware, and Atlanta gives up a lot of yards to running backs through the passing game as well. So Ware should have a big game this week.
Good stuff for the running backs there. Jeff Pasquino, footballguys.com. If you have a fantasy football question, send us a text message to the text board, 609-403-0973. We'll get to your questions in just a minute. Let's look at some wideouts here, Jeff, as we get into these playoff rounds. How about let's go to how about some unheralded guys like Marquise Wilson going up against the 49ers there?
He had 11 targets last week, and the 49ers give up a lot of yards on the run and the pass. Comes down to, do you believe in Matt Barkley? I think that he can get the ball into Wilson's hands, and Wilson just came off of the IR a couple weeks, so I think that he's a viable target, more like a wide receiver 3 this week.
How about Deshaun Jackson? He hasn't really had that big game until last week. 4 for 118 and a touchdown. Is Jackson back for the playoffs?
He is a tough matchup. I mean, he's a boom or bust kind of guy who either hit one deep or not do much. I'm leaning towards the not do much this week because Arizona and the outside defenders and the cornerbacks are really strong.
How about DeAndre Hopkins? I mean, he was a guy that was probably a top 5 wideout last year. Now you're in the playoffs. You've been hanging on with him all year. Is he a guy you like this week?
Well, he's got a good matchup against Green Bay. The only thing holding him back is his quarterback, is Brock Osweiler. But I think that he's probably going to be productive enough to put up some solid numbers, but be more of a wide receiver too, and just keep you in contention this week.
Jeff Pasquino, footballguys.com. Get a couple more questions out there for you guys. If you want to send us a question to the text board, 403-0973. And I got to get into some tight ends this week because there's so many injuries here. Gronk's out. Jordan Reed's out. Kelsey seems like a guy going against the Falcons that you got to get out there. But who are some of these other tight ends that you might recommend, and maybe some sleeper guys that you might have a little bit later too? But that's a position that seems like there's a lot of injuries as the playoffs are here.
Yeah, and I'll give you a couple. I think Vance McDonald is going to be probably on the waiver wire in most leagues, and he's seen 6+ targets for the last 5 weeks, and he's the number 1 target right now for Kaepernick. And I think he's a top 12 tight end. You can probably go pick up and put in your lineup if you really need one this week because of the Gronk injury. I love Kelsey this week against Atlanta. They're bad against tight ends. I also like I like Zach Ertz this week because the Bengals are not good against tight ends, and Ertz has 32 targets the last 4 weeks. So I think those are an option. Hunter Henry is a reasonable option. It's more of a risk play, but also if you really want to, if you're in a deep league, you can go to Ladarius Green against the Giants. Some people are high on him. He's getting a lot of talk. He may see more targets this week, but if you had to pick one of those guys, Vance McDonald is my guy to pick up.
Okay, some unheralded tight ends for you because there hasn't been a lot of tight end questions with Gronk out. Let's get to some of the questions out there from our listeners. Again, if you have a question for Jeff Pasquino from the footballguys.com, you can text us at 403-0973. All right, Jeff, let's start off with half-point PPR. Pick 2, Spencer Ware, Jordan Howard, Booker, or Rawls?
I'm going with the first 2, Ware and Howard.
Ware and Howard. All right. With Trevor Siemian out, do you go Jags defense over the Bengals defense?
I don't think so. I think the Eagles have struggled on the road. If I had to pick one, I'd go with the Bengals.
Malcolm Mitchell or DGB at wide receiver?
I would check the injury report and see if Jordan Matthews is a full go. If he's not, I'd really go to DGB on that one. But Mitchell's not seeing enough targets. I'd probably lean Green Bay no matter what. Yeah,
DGB had a big start to that game last week. Not a lot after that. All right, let's go. How about a tight end question here? Clive Walford or Jermaine Gresham?
Gresham's seeing a lot more targets than offerings, and Walford's not. So I go with Gresham.
Here's a question here for you. Jeff wants to know T.J. Yeldon or Thomas Rawls at running back?
Yeldon may not even play this week, so it's certainly Rawls.
How about you look at running back, or should be wide receiver? Guy wants to know, hey, is Tyreek Hill for real?
Yes, and we have to watch the injury report on Baldwin Macklin. I'm sorry, but if Macklin's definitely out, then Hill is a total start this week. I still like Hill as a wide receiver 3, even if Macklin's active.
Got a question here. You mentioned Yeldon is up in the air. How about Chris Ivory? He's out too. Who's the running back you looking at in Jacksonville?
In a word, none. But really, Denard Robinson would probably be the best guy. And if you're going to attack the Denver defense, which I would not this week, that's the way to go, is the running game.
Jeff Pasquino, footballguys.com. If you have a fantasy football question, we'll get a couple more in. Jeff, do you trust that Andrew Luck will play?
Yes, I think he's got one more thing to. He's got one more evaluation to clear the protocol. He should be fine for Monday night.
Brandon Marshall or Kenny Britt?
Marshall's getting more consistent targets. I'd go with him.
All right,
especially against the Colts.
Jeff Pasquino from the footballguys.com answering your week number 13 fantasy football questions. Jeff, give us a couple guys you're looking to play this week.
I got 4 guys to mention that we haven't gone over yet. Carlos Hyde against the Bears looks to be in a good spot. Check out if Mark Ingram is borderline to play. If he doesn't play, Tim Hightower could get a lot of work in a high-scoring game for New Orleans. Jameson Crowder is probably the highest target for Washington with Jordan Reed out. And the wide receiver I mentioned earlier and alluded to, Mike Wallace tweeted out last Sunday, 7 days. This is a huge revenge game for him against his former team in Miami. The last time that Baltimore had a veteran receiver go up as his former team was Steve Smith 2 years ago, where he had over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns in the first half. Wallace could have a huge game this Sunday.
He's from Baltimore, Pete. Maybe he'll have some Isabella's pizza before he gets there.
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds good to me.
Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. There's your fantasy plays of the week with Jeff Pasquino from the footballguys.com. Week number 13 is here. If you're in the playoffs, good luck. And if not, we'll answer your questions next week for week number 14. Jeff, have a great week, pal.
Good luck, everybody. Enjoy the game.